Okay, so going off that introduction there, why don't you take a minute, if that, and answer those first 4 questions for me. See if you can give me a value for the first 4. If you don't know, take a guess. Anybody go 4 for 4? If you got all 4 right, I want you to quickly discuss with your neighbor, not so much 1 and 2, all right? More 3 and 4. Just describe to them how you thought of it. See if they said the same thing about it, all right? All right. I'm hearing some good discussion when I go around. Who would like to describe their strategy for us? The microphone. You're close, Isa. It's like I feel like an interview. So, Isa, explain to the class how you approach numbers 3 and 4, and please be thorough.
So I just took the 2 numbers and I added them together and then I put a negative symbol in one of them.
So you almost looked at them like they were just both positive. You're like, if I had them both positive, just add them up and then put the negative on the end.
Mm-hmm.
How many of you did that same thing? Very good. I figured that would be a popular method for sure. So that's good. So in the space below, thank you. In the space below, just in your own words, just jot that down. Just jot down your method. If you didn't do it exactly like she described, that's okay. Explain how you did it. All right, good. So remember, using the integer chip way that we went over together. For number 3, if it's a -3 plus a -1, simply that would just be 3 red chips on a board, and then you add 1 more red chip. Or you miss 3 questions in Jeopardy, and then you miss another question. Add them up, you're going to end up with 4 negatives. Okay? The other way that we're going to describe, and this ultimately, guys, is up to you to decide if you want to do this method. You might vacate this and say, no, I don't need to. I know what I'm doing. I have my own rule. I have my own method. It works for me. But I'm just presenting different options for you. The problem here on the next example, it says find the sum of -3 plus -5. This is the one that's right above the number line. Probably should quickly review, and I talked to some of you about this the other day. Why am I wrapping that -5 in parentheses when I write that? Why am I doing that, Nadia? Yeah, we don't. Some kids will look at that and be like, "What do you mean plus -3? Which one is it?" No, it's attached to the 5. It represents a negative. I put it on your paper. I did put it around the -3, but I don't have to. How can I get away with not doing it here, but I have to do it here? A rule? Yeah, another operation, right? Yeah, there's no other operation out there. It has to be a negative sign, right? So anytime you're using a number line, all right, anytime you're using a number line, starting point is always 0. So we begin at 0. The problem it's asking us, if you want to think in terms of like the Jeopardy question, the problem is asking us to add -3 plus a -5. Well, if you start off at 0 and you go to -3, that's obviously a move left of 3 places. And we end up here. When you add more negatives, which direction on the number line are you going to proceed? If I'm adding more negatives, you guys point for me? Which direction if I'm adding more negatives? Some of you that are pointing to my right, which would be your left, exactly. You're going to go 5 more places left. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ultimately, this is my ending point here at -8. So you're kind of just hopping along the number line to ultimately achieve that solution. Okay? All right, so 2 quick questions here. -4 and -6. Add it up. Gives us what? Use that rule described earlier that most of you said you've been comfortable with. Jack, what do you have?
-10.
-10 is right. How about number 2? Tommy, what do we end up with? -20. Good. Now, if you've noticed, I don't know if you have or not, we had, what, 4 at the beginning. The number line problem is 5. We've had 7 problems on this page. What have you noticed about the integers in every single one of them compared to one another? Jack? Both even or both odd. That's a really good observation, but that's not what I was thinking. He's right. He's good, though. Yeah, yeah. They are either both even or both odd. That's just circumstance, or coincidence, rather. There's something else. Look at the signs. They are either both what or both what? Cameron? Yeah, they're the same sign. So you're adding integers with the same sign. That's what this step down here is for, because we're going to write down this rule. So anytime you encounter 2 numbers that have the same sign, whether they're both positive, and if they're both positive, we shouldn't have to go to this rule, but it's the same way. We're going to write down what Issa described, what most of you said that you did earlier. Here's what you're really doing. You add the absolute values. Right? Because -3 plus -1, you just look at that as 3. The absolute value of -3 is 3, plus a positive 1 is 4, and then you put the original sign back on, okay? I'm going to put keep original sign. So if they were both positive, obviously they stay positive. If they were both negative, they would convert to negative, or stay negative, rather. Right? A rule that you all were comfortable with. Okay? Let's go to the next page. Let's flip that over. Same thing. How about 1 and 2? Go ahead and tackle those on your own. We did one like this with the integer chips. So maybe you think of the concept of 0 pair. Anybody go 2 for 2? All right, let's talk about it. Share with somebody first. Explain to them. See if you can put it into words, and then you can write it down on your paper here. So try to put it into words to somebody sitting around you. Okay, so how about the next one? Then what did you do for that? So you're kind of like the zero pair thing, like with those chips, how you pair up the same number of red and black. Like you paired up like 5 red with this 10, right? And you said you had 5 left over. I mean, boys, based on what you're saying, it sounds like that's where you're at. That's good. Okay, so let's talk about strategies here so we can write it down. Hopefully you've written or scribbled something down here in terms of your own personal way of viewing this. And you might have found somebody else that didn't have the exact same way as you, and that's fine. Ultimately, guys, you need to find a way that works for you. So, can anyone describe to us how you would approach problems like this, where if you hadn't noticed, these now have different signs. So they're not both negative, they're not both positive, they're different signs. Kate, do you want to describe? Here, let me interview you.
Thank you. I thought of it like a number line in this one. So you start at -5, and then when you add 10 to it, you get +5, which for me is easier than the other way to do it.
So I'm just picking up where she told. So I'm just using the number line here. She's thinking on a number line, beginning at 0, so it's -5. She bounces left to -5 as a starting point. And now when you add a positive, remember we said add a negative, you all pointed left, go left, go left. Well, if you add a positive, we know from that lesson that the numbers are getting larger. So she added 10 going to the right. And up front. Okay. So on the next one, Kate, did you do the same type of thing?
Yeah, so I just went straight to the +3, and then when I subtracted 4 from that, I got to -1.
This way. Circle that for negative 1. Very good. All right, how many of you thought number line, like Kate? Okay. What's a different way? Maybe you were working with. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I just kind of thought of it as like you're subtracting like the negative number's absolute value from the positive number. So you subtract 5 from 10 to get 5, and then you subtract -4 from, or you subtract 4 from 3, and then that's -1.
So you're thinking like this, or were you
Yeah.
thinking 4 minus 3 to get your 1?
No, like the 3 minus 4.
You were doing this, and
Yeah.
you knew that was -1. Yeah. So that's the same thing as this. Now, how many? And what she was saying on the first one. How many of you kind of turned this into a subtraction problem? Anybody think of it like that? A lot of you did, right? Okay, so when you do this subtraction, 10 minus 5, how do you know what the sign is going to be? How do you know if it's going to be positive or negative? What determines that? Marion? Okay, so she said you subtract the bigger number minus the smaller number, but wouldn't the positive number always be the bigger number? So like the bigger absolute value then, right? Exactly. So when you're thinking like that, I just look at the numbers as if they were both positive, and then I subtract the smaller from the larger. All right. How do you determine the sign then, Marion? The bigger absolute value. Exactly. Okay. I like the number line way. I like the way Mara described. I like the way that Marion's describing. I like all of these ways. I'll tell you what I like even more, you getting the right answer. Okay? So if your way didn't fit into exactly what we were saying, now Jack, you brought up something with like kind of like the zero pair, right? So go ahead and say what you were talking about. He blanked. But I like it. So he's thinking like, all right, what do I have to do to get rid of zero pair? And he said, okay, well I have 3 positives and 4 negatives. These 3 positives are going to take away 3 of the negatives. So I'm left with 1 negative. These 5 negatives are going to take care of 5 of these positives, so I'd be left with 5 more positive. It is kind of similar to the subtraction way before, but maybe it's just a slightly different change in the way we think about it. So let's get down here and let's write this rule out. And I'm going to write it in a way that, again, if your way doesn't fit this exactly, then that's okay. You don't have to use it that way. I'm going to first say subtract smaller absolute value, and I'm going to abbreviate AV, from larger absolute value. This is the way, like I was talking with Marion about. She said take away the smaller number absolute value from the larger number or absolute value. I'm going to condense this into 2 steps. Keep sign of which one again? Larger absolute value. Yeah, whichever one you have more of, that's how you're going to keep the sign. Okay? All right, good. That's a good place to end. See you tomorrow.